Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If copy system in Naruto. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Quick update. What If Reborn as Gohan in future timeline is now on hold, since we've caught up with the author. So now, I need your help picking the next project for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these three fanfics. What if Transmigrated in One Piece and becoming a Marine? What if Ichigo awoke his powers to save his mother? What if Transmigrated into a nightmare mode Dragon Ball world? Please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. I'll take the top pick and start working on that as the series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 381, The Akatsuki's Plan begins. Ding! Congratulations, Master, you have obtained one advanced replication card. Hearing the system's voice, Shin, who had been sound asleep, opened his eyes. 2 years had passed in the blink of an eye, and Shin had acquired 2 advanced replication cards. However, this wasn't particularly important. Even with the replication cards, Shin had no immediate use for them. Shin and you're awake. Konan opened her eyes, nestled in Shin's embrace. Yes, Shin had slept with Konan last night. Want to get up? Shin gently stroked Konan's bluish-purple hair. Konan blushed and said shyly, I can't get up. I have no strength. It's all your fault, Shin and She knew she'd be teased later, but she didn't mind. The others weren't exactly in any better shape. Alright then, Konan, you rest well. Shin let Konan rest and got up himself, pushing open the door and heading outside. You all finished breakfast already? Didn't save any for us? Shin, upon emerging, saw Kushina and the others who had just finished eating and couldn't help but ask. Can't help it. You two woke up so late, Kushina said with a shrug. There's still some in the kitchen. We saved some specially. Mikoto told Shin. Mikoto, you're the best. You always look after me. Shin smiled faintly and headed towards the kitchen. After Shin finished eating, he brought breakfast into the room and personally fed Konan. So envious. Hanabi, you little brat, you know it's rude to enter without knocking, don't you? Where are your manners? Shin lectured Hanabi. I know. Why are you becoming just like big sister? Hanabi said glumly. Her sister Hinata often lectured her about manners. Your personality is getting wilder. You'll become unpopular. Shin pinched Hanabi's cheek. It was surprisingly soft and squishy. Hanabi, can you leave? Konan was quite shy at the moment, feeling an urge to bury her head under the covers. Konan-nichan, are you shy? Big sister is the real shy one. Hanabi glanced at Konan, then thought of her sister Hinata and couldn't help but say to Konan. Hanabi, since you like staying here, then you can feed Konan breakfast. I have some business to attend to. Shin placed the breakfast in Hanabi's hands, then, amidst Hanabi's bewildered gaze, used Yamatsu Hirasaka and left the land of whirlpools. White Setsu, what brings you to me? Shin asked White Setsu coolly. White Setsu possessed a flying thunder god kunai Shin had given him, allowing White Setsu to contact him during major events. Shin-sama, Obito Uchiha discussed with Nagato earlier. They are preparing to execute the plan. So I came to report to Shin specifically, White Setsu reported respectfully. Executing the plan now? Shin wasn't surprised. It was indeed about that time. The Akatsuki's Tailed Beast collection plan was about to begin. That's right. Obito and Nagato have already discussed it. I felt this was a major event and needed to be reported to Shin-sama. White Setsu lowered his head. It wasn't that he wanted to report to Shin, but if he didn't, he risked being killed. Besides, these matters weren't particularly secret. Even if he reported them to Shin, it wouldn't be a problem. Shin would find out sooner or later. Probably in a short while, Nagato Uzumaki would gather the Akatsuki members and make an announcement. Good to know. Shin waved his hand at White Zetsu. White Zetsu immediately flickered away. He understood Shin's meaning. In that case, I should pay the Akatsuki a visit. After White Zetsu left, Shin muttered to himself. Before heading to the Akatsuki base, Shin first returned to the land of whirlpools, informed Kushina and the others, then departed for the Akatsuki base. Hey, who are you? Intruding on the Akatsuki's hideout? I'll sacrifice you to Jashin-sama. Haiden, seeing Shin suddenly appear in the Akatsuki base, brandished his triple-bladed scythe, his killing intent overflowing as he looked at Shin. Tired of living, are you? Kakuzu, seeing Haiden's actions, couldn't help but curse inwardly. Although Haiden possessed an immortal body, Kakuzu felt Shin Uzumaki could find a way to kill him permanently. Shin glanced at Haiden, and Haiden collapsed to the ground with a thud. Though not dead, Shin's single genjutsu had taken Haiden down. Kakuzu went over to check and found Haiden wasn't dead, sighing in relief. He had spent a considerable amount of time with Haiden. Kakuzu still had some feelings for him and didn't want to see him killed. Shin Uzumaki? This is the first time I've seen him. Deidara looked at Shin with great curiosity. If you don't want to die, don't anger him. You might end up worse than Haiden. Sasori, Deidara's partner, kindly reminded Deidara. Although these two disagreed on artistic philosophy, they sometimes shared a mutual respect. Sasori didn't want to see Deidara to get himself killed. Deidara glanced at Sasori in surprise. Though he was fearless by nature, he didn't go looking for trouble. He wasn't an idiot like Haiden. These new Akatsuki members, this is the first time I've seen them. Shin's gaze swept over all of them. All the Akatsuki members were present. No, wait. Obito, the one hiding in the shadows, hadn't appeared, and Nagato's main body was also absent, but the Deva path represented everything. Being scanned by Shin's gaze, they felt immense pressure. Though Shin hadn't displayed any aura, he gave them an overwhelming sense of invincibility. Phew. Itachi Uchiha exhaled. Even just standing with Shin Uzumaki felt oppressive. He didn't know how strong Shin Uzumaki truly was. But it was certain that Shin Uzumaki's strength surpassed that of the leader, Pain. He wondered what Shin's purpose in joining the Akatsuki was. As an undercover agent, Itachi Uchiha was under immense pressure. If Konoha faced an enemy like Shin Uzumaki, could they truly resist? Itachi Uchiha didn't know. He'd just have to take it one step at a time. You're here too. Pain glanced at Shin. Among everyone here, his feelings towards Shin were the most complex, and he was also the most wary, the most unwilling to see Shin. Of course. I'm a member of the Akatsuki, after all. Shin said with a smile. Pain looked deeply at Shin but said nothing. Though Shin claimed to be a member of the Akatsuki, he hadn't contributed anything to the organization. However, now that the plan was about to begin, perhaps he could borrow Shin Uzumaki's strength. Some of the more difficult, troublesome targets could be left to Shin Uzumaki to handle. He just didn't know if Shin would agree. After all, he couldn't command Shin Uzumaki. Chapter 382, Return to Sunagakure. All the Akatsuki members gathered. Black Zetsu and White Zetsu were also present. Only Obito Uchiha, who preferred to remain in the shadows, was absent. Haiden, who had been caught in Shin's genjutsu earlier, had recovered and was now standing, though he looked at Shin with considerable fear. Who knew what horrors he had experienced in that illusion? Shin stood atop the demonic statue of the outer path, making no comment. He was purely here as an observer. However, the Akatsuki's tailed beast collection plan wasn't entirely unrelated to Shin. Yuki, the Eight Tails, was currently under Shin's control. When you joined the Akatsuki, I explained our objective, to retrieve all the tailed beasts. The tailed beast capture plan officially begins now. Pain didn't give a lengthy speech. Nagato, unlike Yahiko, was introverted and not one for grand pronouncements. Besides, did capturing tailed beasts really require a motivational speech? Next came the assignment of tailed beasts. The task of capturing the one tail, Shikaku, fell to Sasori and Deidara, the art duo. Mind if I tag along? Shin asked Sasori and Deidara with a faint smile. Pain glanced at Shin. Nagato, hidden in the shadows, frowned. Hopefully, Shin Uzumaki won't cause any trouble. If Shin disrupted the plan, Nagato wouldn't hesitate to become his enemy. The tailed beasts were crucial for achieving world peace, Yahiko's dream. Nagato couldn't allow any mishaps. Nagato's resolve was even firmer now than in the original story. Shin wondered if Naruto Uzumaki could still defeat him with talk no jutsu. If Shindano wishes to accompany us, I have no objections, Sasori said. In terms of age, Shin and Sasori were peers. But Shin's strength commanded respect. Dano was appropriate. Deidara glanced at Sasori. He had no objections either. This was a good opportunity to learn more about Shin Uzumaki. He'd heard that Inoki had almost been killed by Shin. Deidara wanted to see for himself how strong someone capable of nearly killing Inoki truly was. Zetsu, responsible for intelligence gathering, provided Sasori with all available information on the one-tailed Jinchuriki. The one-tailed Jinchuriki is the fifth Kazekage? This will be a bit challenging. Master Sasori, returning to your village, any thoughts? Deidara asked Sasori. Sasori glanced at Deidara, then controlled Hiriko and departed without a word. Seeing Sasori ignore him, Deidara wouldn't pursue the matter further. He turned his gaze towards Shin. Shindano, I heard you fought Inoki, is it true? Deidara's personality was quite lively. He was very interested in this matter, mainly because he couldn't stand his stubborn old teacher, Inoki. Inoki? I just put him in his place. Nothing serious, Shin said dismissively, waving his hand. Deidara looked skeptical. Is he bragging? Though he disliked the stubborn Inoki, Deidara recognized his strength. Deidara doubted Shin Uzumaki could actually defeat Inoki, let alone put him in his place. He considered Shin's claim an exaggeration. The truth was, Shin wasn't bragging. Though his strength back then was far from his current level, defeating Inoki had been child's play. He hadn't even needed to use his hands, his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan alone could have overwhelmed Inoki. The Akatsuki members dispersed, each with their assigned tasks. However, the tailed beast sealing process had to begin with the one tail and end with the 9 tails. Shin treated the journey as a leisurely sightseeing trip. Deidara, however, was frustrated by Sasori's slow pace. Master Sasori, are you going soft because we're attacking Sunagakure? Is that why you're moving so slowly? Soft? Ha! Sasori sneered coldly. He wouldn't go soft even against Sunagakure. Otherwise, he wouldn't have killed the third Kazekage back then. This weather's awful. Shin looked at the sandstorm raging in the distance. It didn't affect Shin much. He formed a repulsive force field around his body, blocking all the wind and sand. Deidara, however, was unlucky, getting several mouthfuls of sand, his appearance quite disheveled. Sasori was fine, hidden within Hiriko, impervious to the sandstorm. If I had known, I wouldn't have joined this mission. Deidara couldn't help but complain. Eating sand here, how does that compare to blowing up a few villages? Yes, Deidara was a terrorist. Art is an explosion. So, Deidara often blew up villages to showcase his art. If not for Pain's overwhelming threat, Deidara might have even blown up the Akatsuki base. Arriving at Sunagakure, the situation was somewhat better. The village was built on an oasis, far superior to other parts of the Land of Wind. Sunagakure should have asked Hashirama Senju to plant some trees back then, Shin couldn't help but comment. If Sunagakure had asked Hashirama, given his personality, he might have actually come to help. How do we get in? Deidara asked Sasori. I have a spy in the village. They will help us get in, Sasori replied calmly. I don't care how you get in. I'm going in first. By the way, don't expect any help from me. Shin glanced at them, then strolled openly into Sunagakure. No way. Are the Suna guards blind? Why aren't they stopping him? Maybe we should just walk in like that too. Deidara, seeing Shin casually walk in while the guards at the gate didn't react at all, also wanted to try. If you don't want to die, don't, Sasori said coolly. Just because Shin Uzumaki could walk in didn't mean they could. If they were spotted, it would jeopardize their plan. TCH. I'll just fly in. Deidara glanced at Sasori, then used his explosive clay to create a giant bird. He leaped onto its back and directed it towards the interior of Sunagakure. That idiot, Sasori was quite annoyed. Though rumors claimed Sunagakure's internal strength had weakened, Sasori knew that if it were just the two of them against Suna, their chances weren't great. Having originated from Sunagakure, Sasori was very familiar with the village's true strength. Chapter 383, Shall I demonstrate how to destroy Sunagakure? Shin strolled through the streets of Sunagakure, attracting quite a few gazes, especially from women. My irresistible charm, it's a burden, really. Shin lamented melodramatically. If Kushina and the others were here, they'd accuse him of being narcissistic. But Shin wouldn't consider himself narcissistic, he was just stating facts. Sunagakure looks even more dilapidated than before. Shin surveyed his surroundings. It had been over a decade since his last visit. In that time, Sunagakure hadn't improved at all, in fact, it had deteriorated further. The primary reason was the Third Shinobi World War, which had completely drained Sunagakure's resources. The Land of Wind, though a large nation, wasn't particularly wealthy. Its vast territory was mostly desert, with a harsh geographical environment. Coupled with Sunagakure's defeat in the war, the Land of Wind daimyo stopped funding the village. Sunagakure was forced to tighten its belt and adopt an elite ninja training policy. It wasn't a choice, they simply didn't have enough money to train a large number of ninja. Training ninja was incredibly expensive. Boom! As Shin walked, an explosion sounded nearby. He looked up to see Deidara bombing Sunagakure with his explosive clay. Quite arrogant. Shin chuckled lightly, then paid it no further mind. Owner, a bottle of sake. Shin entered a tavern and addressed the panicked owner. Just take it yourself. No charge. The owner fled in terror. The explosions outside were terrifying, his life was more important than a bit of money. Shin casually took a bottle of sake from the counter and walked out of the tavern. Sunagakure's ninja had all been alerted by now. Ha 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 ha. Deidara cackled atop his clay bird, reveling in the sight of the panicked Suna ninja below. Gaara stood on the Kazekage tower, looking up at the small black dot in the sky. Deidara on his bird. Sand shuriken. Countless shuriken formed from sand shot towards the sky, targeting the cackling Deidara. Deidara, sensing danger, quickly leaned to the side, but he was a step too slow. A lock of his hair was severed, and a bloody scratch appeared on his face. I'm flying this high, and he can still hit me? Deidara was surprised and angered. He controlled his bird to descend, wanting to see who had attacked him. That idiot, Deidara. He's making too much noise. Sasori, who had infiltrated Sunagakure, fumed. He had thought Deidara was just scouting, but Deidara had actually started attacking. Since Deidara had made his move, Sasori, though reluctant, had no choice but to act as well. He didn't believe Deidara could complete the mission alone. This was Sunagakure's home turf, and Sasori knew Suna had hidden power, like his grandmother, Chiyo. His grandmother Chiyo was Sunagakure's strongest puppeteer. Though Sasori now believed that title should belong to him, he didn't underestimate his grandmother. Furthermore, there was Ebizo, whose combat strength was once Kage level. Even if age had diminished his power, he was still at least quasi-Kage level. If they appeared, Deidara would likely be killed. Sasori controlled his puppets, attacking the Suna ninja. Meanwhile, Deidara had already engaged Gaara in battle. Deidara's explosive clay was completely blocked by Gaara's sand. With his armor of sand, even powerful explosions couldn't break through Gaara's defense. Shin, observing from nearby, took a sip of sake and nodded lightly.
Gaara's strength was indeed sufficient to be Kazekage. Well, just barely.
Among the Kage of the 5 great villages, Gaara's strength was likely the weakest, probably not even comparable to the current Mizukage, Hayashi Hyuga.
Shin Uzumaki. Why are you in Sunagakure? Is this your doing? An angry voice questioned Shin. Chiyo, you're not dead yet?
Shin didn't turn around, but he knew who was standing behind him. In the original story, Chiyo and Ebizo only appeared after Gaara was captured. It seemed things had changed. The old woman Chiyo's nose practically contorted with rage. She was about to attack Shin, but the quick-witted Ebizo stopped her.
Sister, consider the bigger picture. Don't act recklessly.
Ebizo earnestly advised Chiyo.
If they really fought, they definitely wouldn't be Shin Uzumaki's match. They weren't his match before, let alone now.
So many years had passed, Shin Uzumaki's strength had surely increased significantly, while theirs hadn't improved and had likely even regressed. With this disparity, they would probably be crushed.
Humph. Chiyo snorted coldly but heeded Ebizo's advice and didn't attack.
Recognizing me just from my back, you're quite impressive, Shin said with a faint smile. Ebizo remained silent, touching a spot slightly to the right of his heart, which ached faintly. Ebizo had once been nearly killed by Shin Uzumaki, his heart almost pierced by Shin's blade.
His memory of Shin was incredibly vivid. Are you involved in this? Do you want to destroy Sunagakure? Chiyo glared angrily at Shin. Don't make baseless accusations. This has nothing to do with me. Besides, do you want to see me destroy Sunagakure? Shall I demonstrate how to destroy Sunagakure for you?
Shin turned around, looking at Chiyo and Ebizo. Shin wasn't just talking, he was actually doing it.
Would release, deep forest emergence. Countless trees erupted from the ground, destroying Sunagakure's buildings.
Nothing escaped the wood release's destructive power. In the blink of an eye, the original Sunagakure was transformed into a forest.
Sunagakure should be considered gone now, right?
Shin said with a faint smile.
Relax. I didn't kill anyone. Just destroyed all of Sunagakure's buildings. Actually, you should thank me. I've given you a vast forest. Chiyo's face turned ashen. She was almost overcome with anger by Shin's words. This is wood release. When did Shin Uzumaki learn wood release?
Ebizo looked at Shin, his eyes filled with apprehension.
Shin Uzumaki was becoming increasingly unfathomable. Sister, absolutely do not attack.
Ebizo quickly stopped Chiyo, who looked like she was about to explode.
Shin Uzumaki had only destroyed Sunagakure's buildings. Though the loss was great, it was still acceptable. But if they attacked Shin Uzumaki, he would likely start killing. Shin Uzumaki was no saint. Chapter 384, I don't play by the rules.
Deidara, soaring on his clay bird above Sunagakure, watched in stunned silence as a vast forest suddenly materialized, engulfing the entire village.
After a long moment, Deidara couldn't help but curse. What the hell just happened? Where did this forest come from?
Just moments ago, there was nothing. In the blink of an eye, a huge forest had sprung up.
What was going on? Deidara didn't even consider ninjutsu.
Everyone knew wood release had vanished from the shinobi world. Besides, this was an entire hidden village being enveloped by trees.
Deidara felt that even his ultimate art, C0, wouldn't be enough to completely destroy this forest. The Suna ninja were the most shocked. Watching their village instantly pierced and overrun by countless erupting trees, they dropped their kunai in disbelief. Shin Uzumaki. What do you want?
Chiyo, though managing to restrain herself from attacking Shin Uzumaki, still spoke with a harsh tone. Although Chiyo hadn't been involved in village affairs for a long time, she was still well aware of Suna's financial situation. The village would likely need to be rebuilt. The economic losses, it was no exaggeration to say Sunagakure couldn't afford it. Not every village was Konoha. Konoha had been destroyed several times but had the wealth to rebuild.
Sunagakure lacked that capability, their economic situation wouldn't allow it. This was why all the other villages coveted Konoha, it was too wealthy. The other villages looked on with envy. Chio, I suggest you watch your tone. Believe it or not, I could erase Sunagakure with a single hand seal, don't test me. Shin looked coolly at the clamoring Chio. Chio's expression changed, and she finally reined in her anger. Ebizo was also terrified. No doubt, Shin Uzumaki was capable of it. Thinking back to the Second Shinobi World War, how many had died at Shin Uzumaki's hands? Please, forgive us. We apologize. We were wrong. Ebizo, in his apology, also pulled Chio back. For the sake of the village, they had to endure this humiliation for now. I'm sorry. Chio's apology was stiff, her heart filled with frustration to the point of near suffocation. They had simply asked him a few questions and he'd destroyed their village, now threatening to kill them all. Where was the justice in that? There was no place for justice, after all, might makes right. If she dared to reason with Shin Uzumaki, he'd probably kill her. Shin Uzumaki doesn't play by the rules. Of course, if they possess strength superior to Shin's, they wouldn't be reasoning with him either, they would have already taken him down. Actually, if you hadn't disturbed me, none of this would have happened. So, Sunagakure's losses are entirely your fault. Shin glanced at the apologizing Chio and Ebizo, then turned away to continue drinking, casually shifting the blame onto them. Sister, let's go. Let's first see who is attacking Sunagakure. Ebizo, seeing Chio's barely suppressed rage, forcefully pulled her away. He couldn't let his sister anger Shin Uzumaki. Chio glanced at Ebizo. The attacker was right here. Ebizo understood Chio's meaning and shook his head at her. Sister, I was referring to the people who attacked the village before. Chio nodded. Though she had said she wouldn't interfere in village affairs anymore, Sunagakure was facing a major disaster. She couldn't stand by and watch Suna suffer. Boom boom boom. Just as Chio and Ebizo were about to investigate, a series of thunderous explosions echoed. Deidara had resumed his artistic journey. The flames from the explosions landed on the trees. Normal trees might have been ignited, however, Shin's would release created trees with such vigorous life force that the flames couldn't ignite them. The main reason was the fire's insufficient intensity. If it were Madara Uchiha using fire release, perhaps he could have done it. Still holding on? Looks like I need to get serious. If I can't even take down a little brat, what will they think of me? Deidara looked at Gaara, who was blocking his clay bombs. Gaara panted heavily, his chakra excessively depleted. He was about to collapse. Actually, if not for Shin, Gaara wouldn't be in such a sorry state. Shin's wood release had hindered Gaara's sand, forcing him into a passive, defensive position. C4, Karora, this was a ninjutsu Deidara had created to defeat Itachi Uchiha. Now, Gaara would be the first to experience it. A giant doll fell from the sky. This was a doll formed from explosive clay, filled with microscopic clay spiders invisible to the naked eye. Once the doll exploded, these clay spiders would scatter into the air. Anyone who inhaled would inadvertently suck the spiders into their body, where they would then detonate internally. This technique was incredibly dangerous. Even if one dodged the doll's main explosion, they could still be killed by the invisible clay spiders. After unleashing the technique, Deidara couldn't help but lean against his clay bird, quickly taking out a few soldier pills and swallowing them. Boom! A deafening roar that could be heard throughout Sunagakure. The forest was blasted, leaving a massive crater. Gaara lay on the ground, his condition unknown. Don't tell me he's dead. Deidara peered down at Gaara. Their mission is to capture him alive. If a Jinchuriki died, the tailed beast would die as well. So, the Jinchuriki absolutely could not be killed. Deidara felt a bit apprehensive. If Gaara died by his hand, Pain would definitely not let him off. Though Deidara was quite arrogant, he still felt some fear towards the Akatsuki leader, Pain. Pop pop pop. A series of small explosions erupted on Gaara's skin, the detonation of the invisible clay spiders.
The power of these explosions wasn't great, but the key was their ability to enter the body.
Internal explosions were far too dangerous. No! I have to make sure he doesn't die. Deidara panicked slightly.
He immediately controlled his clay bird to fly down, preparing to check Gaara's condition. Just as Deidara's hand reached out, Gaara, who appeared to be bleeding from all 7 orifices and covered in blood like a bloodman, suddenly opened his eyes.
Before Deidara could react, Gaara's-san lashed out, ripping off Deidara's left arm. Die! Deidara punched Gaara in the head, knocking him unconscious. I knew you'd get injured. Sasori emerged unhurriedly from the shadows, looking coolly at Deidara. Deidara held his severed arm, stopping the bleeding to avoid bleeding to death. Don't worry.
If you die, I'll turn you into a puppet, letting you live forever, Sasori said to Deidara.
TCH. That day will never come, Deidara wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and said disdainfully. Chapter 385, Sunagakure asks Konoha for help. Well. Can you move? Sasori asked Deidara. It's just an arm.
I'll be fine, Deidara said, feigning ease.
In reality, Deidara was in excruciating pain, but he couldn't lose face. He had to endure it.
As for the severed arm, Deidara wasn't worried.
He'd just find Kakuzu later and have him stitch it back on. Kakuzu often did this kind of thing for Haiden. Deidara trusted Kakuzu's skills. A severed arm wasn't a big deal in the Naruto world, reattaching it was quite simple. Since you're fine, take Gaara and leave. I'll hold off any pursuers, Sasori instructed Deidara. Oh. In that case, be careful. Don't die.
Deidara said to Sasori with concern, then picked up the unconscious Gaara, jumped onto his claybird, and quickly departed. He wouldn't offer to stay and help, he knew his current condition. Though he could still fight, his combat strength was severely diminished.
Staying would risk death. After Deidara left, Sasori looked at Kankuro, who had just arrived.
Kankuro should have arrived much sooner, but Shin's wood release had blocked his path, causing him to be late. Though Shin hadn't intended to help Sasori and the others, he had inadvertently done so.
Don't underestimate this small act of assistance. Without Shin, they might not have successfully captured Gaara.
Remember, Chio and Ebizo had been delayed by Shin earlier.
If not for that delay, Chio and Ebizo would have definitely arrived before Gaara was defeated. Once Chio and Ebizo arrived, whether Deidara could defeat and capture Gaara would have been uncertain. But now, Deidara had left with Gaara, they had succeeded. As long as Sasori could escape, the mission would be a perfect success. As for Deidara's severed arm, it wasn't a problem. Kakuzu could reattach it. Sasori easily defeated Kankuro, then quickly departed, showing none of Hiriko's usual clumsiness. Kankuro didn't die, but he was afflicted with a potent poison developed by Sasori. Chio probably couldn't create an antidote. Though Chio was a master of poisons, it didn't mean she was skilled at creating antidotes. By the time Chio and Ebizo arrived, it was already too late. They only saw Kankuro lying on the ground, critically poisoned. Chio helplessly helped Kankuro up and checked his condition. Suddenly, Chio's expression darkened, a hint of sorrow appearing on her face. What's wrong, sister? Ebizo, seeing his sister's expression, felt a sense of foreboding. This is Sasori's poison, Chio said gravely. Ebizo wanted to ask how she knew it was Sasori's poison, but seeing Chio's grim expression, he wisely refrained. Gaara seems to have been captured. Ebizo felt a headache coming on. Their Kazekage had been captured. Thinking about Sunagakure, it was truly too tragic. The third Kazekage died mysteriously, suddenly disappearing. Then the fourth Kazekage was killed by Orochimaru, and they didn't even know when it happened. And now, the fifth Kazekage had been captured within their own village. This was an immense humiliation. Our only option now is to ask Konoha for help, Ebizo sighed, speaking his thoughts. What? Ask Konoha for help? Chio, who had been lost in grief, suddenly looked up, staring intently at Ebizo. Seeing his sister's strong reaction, Ebizo smiled wryly.
He knew why she reacted that way. I know you don't want to ask Konoha for help, sister.
But we have no other choice now. Didn't Suna just re-sign an alliance with Konoha 2 years ago? We can only ask Konoha. What else could they do? The Kazekage was captured, and even Sunagakure itself was in ruins. What else could they do but ask for help? If the Kazekage were still here, the decision would be his. But now, with the Kazekage captured, only they could make the decision. I know you hold a grudge against Konoha because of what happened to your son and daughter-in-law, sister. But you also know Sunagakure's current situation. This isn't the time to dwell on such things. Ebizo knew his sister still harbored deep hatred for Konoha due to the deaths of her son and daughter-in-law, but they had no other choice now. If they still wanted to be one of the 5 great villages, they had to request Konoha's assistance. I understand. You make the arrangements.
I'll help him suppress the poison first. Shio said no more, but her heart felt heavy. She never thought she'd see the day she had to ask her enemies for help. It was truly pathetic. Ebizo immediately gathered the Suna ninja, selected Baki, and ordered him to head to Konoha at top speed to request their aid. Time was of the essence. With the Kazekage captured, who knew what might happen? What if he was killed? What do you plan to do about Shin Uzumaki? Shio, having temporarily suppressed the poison in Kenkuro's body, asked Ebizo. What else can we do? Leave him be. Ebizo smiled wryly, his eyebrows twitching. They couldn't handle Shin, they could only leave him alone. Actually, Ebizo didn't need to worry. Shin was no longer in Sunagakure, he had already caught up with Deidara. Shindano. Did Sasori escape? Deidara asked Shin, grimacing in pain. The agony of a severed arm wasn't something a normal person could endure. Deidara was quite resilient. Sasori is fine, Shin told Deidara. That's good. If he died, I probably wouldn't have anyone to compare art with. Deidara didn't want to see Sasori die. Of course, if Sasori did die, Deidara wouldn't necessarily feel much grief. By the way, Shindano, can you help me reattach my arm? You should have that ability, right? Deidara's eyes lit up slightly as he asked Shin. Of course, Deidara didn't hold much hope. Even if Shin Uzumaki was incredibly strong, skills were specialized. He might not be able to heal his severed arm. Shin looked deeply at Deidara. This guy isn't shy about asking. But it didn't matter, Shin held no ill will towards Deidara. Besides, for Shin, this was just a small favor, an effortless task. Alright, I can help you. A ball of green chakra appeared in Shin's hand. He tossed it towards Deidara. A moment later, Deidara held his severed left arm in his right hand, then looked at his newly regrown left arm, falling into stunned silence. What is this technique? It made a severed arm grow back. Deidara had only thought Shin would help him reattach it. Chapter 386, Konoha's Support. What? Are you not happy with my healing? Shin glanced at Deidara and asked. Happy. I'm grateful. Deidara flexed his newly grown arm. It was exactly like his original, no difference at all. This made Deidara look at Shin with a new sense of awe. It seems the Reaper of the Shinobi world, the one who instills fear throughout the ninja world, isn't just an empty title. Perhaps the third Tsuchikage really was no match for him. Right. If it were fake, knowing the old man's personality, he would have definitely come out to refute the rumors. That old man cares about his face. Meaning, the severed arm of mine is useless now. Deidara looked at his detached arm. With a new arm grown, this one was indeed useless. Might as well bury it. He definitely had to bury it. He couldn't just leave it lying around. What if some wild animal ate it? Although it was useless to him now, it was still his arm. If a wild beast really dragged it away, Deidara would feel very annoyed. After burying his arm, Deidara tossed Gaara aside and asked Shindano, why hasn't Sasori arrived yet? Could he have been captured?
Deidara's face was somewhat pale, a result of earlier blood loss, though now that his arm had recovered, Deidara's mood had improved considerably.
That depends on Sasori's speed. If he's slow, he might have been caught, Shin said with a light chuckle.
If Sasori encountered Chio, he might not make it back. Sunagakure, though weakened, was still strong enough to deal with Sasori. However, it wasn't long before Sasori arrived, dragging the cumbersome Hiroko puppet. Your arm? Sasori looked at Deidara's perfectly intact arm with great confusion. Wasn't it severed earlier? My arm is healed. It's all thanks to Shin-senpai's help, Deidara said with considerable respect. Previously, when Deidara called Shin Dano, it didn't carry much respect. But now, Deidara held Shin in high esteem. Sasori couldn't help but glance at Shin. Proficient in medical ninjutsu? He wasn't too surprised. Sasori simply assumed Shin had used medical ninjutsu, but Shin had actually used yin-yang release.
In the original story, Naruto could create an eye for Kakashi.
Shin could naturally create an arm for Deidara.
Carrying the still unconscious Gaara, Sasori and the others quickly found a place to extract and seal the tailed beast within him. As for sealing the tailed beast, Shin didn't get involved. Watching Pain and the others seal the tailed beast, Shin found it somewhat amusing. So many people, struggling for several days just to seal the mere one tail. If it were Shin, simply controlling the demonic statue of the outer path would allow him to instantly seal the one tail. This was likely because Nagato Uzumaki's control over the demonic statue wasn't very good, hence the slow sealing process. After all, only the Rinnegan could control the demonic statue, and Nagato Uzumaki's Rinnegan wasn't his own, its use was restricted. Ignoring their sealing process, Shin simply left and returned to the land of whirlpools.
Meanwhile, Baki, rushing desperately, finally arrived in Konoha.
He met Jiraiya, explained the situation, and requested Jiraiya's help.
The Akatsuki?
Jiraiya fell into thought.
He knew a bit about the Akatsuki. This information was from Hiruzen Sarutobi.
When Hiruzen's son was killed, he had thoroughly investigated the Akatsuki and learned some things about them.
All right. I will send people to help. After all, Sunagakure is Konoha's ally.
Jiraiya hesitated for a long time, then finally agreed to Baki's request.
He chose to help Sunagakure partly to strengthen the alliance between their villages. Another reason was to probe the Akatsuki. Thank you, Lord Hokage. I hope you will dispatch ninja as soon as possible. Baki was overjoyed and couldn't help but urge Jiraiya.
With the fifth Kazekage, Gaara, captured, the situation was unknown.
Baki was worried. What if Gaara was killed before they arrived? Jiraiya didn't delay.
Since he had agreed to help Sunagakure, he couldn't just go through the motions, otherwise, it might have the opposite effect. He immediately summoned Kakashi and Guy, ordering them to lead their teams to provide support. Sending Kakashi and Guy already showed great importance.
Konoha didn't have many other capable generals to spare at the moment.
Jiraiya, as Hokage, certainly couldn't personally go to help with the rescue. After receiving the mission, Kakashi and Guy departed with Naruto Uzumaki and their teams.
Naruto Uzumaki was very anxious.
Although the plot had deviated from the original story, and the Konoha crush plan was different, Naruto had still become good friends with Gaara and had successfully brainwashed him with his talk no jutsu.
This was why Gaara became Kazekage. Without Naruto's talk no jutsu, how could Gaara's personality have allowed him to become Kazekage? The group arrived in Sunagakure. Kakashi was mistaken for Hatake Tsukumo by Chio, and they almost came to blows. Fortunately, Ebizo was there to mediate, and a fight was avoided. Actually, if they had fought, Sunagakure wouldn't have had the advantage. In the original story, Guy arrived later as reinforcements, but now, they had come together. However, there was a problem. Kankuro's poison, he would die within 3 days, and there was no way to break it. In the original story, Sakura healed him, but the current Sakura didn't know medical ninjutsu at all. Tsunade was in the land of whirlpools, who could Sakura learn medical ninjutsu from? So, Kankuro couldn't be saved. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, Kankuro could only wait for death.
Shio was also helpless against this poison.
She excelled at creating poisons, not antidotes. They could only hope Sasori had an antidote.
Shio decided to go along, bringing Sunagakir's elite ninja to rescue Gaara.
Although Konoha had sent help, they couldn't pin all their hopes on Konoha. Besides, Shio didn't trust Konoha's people at all.
The group was filled with conflict.
Naruto, Uzumaki and Shio bickered constantly. At the Akatsuki's sealing location for the One Tail, Pain also knew that Gaara's rescuers were on their way, including reinforcements from Konoha.
The sealing process still needed some time to complete, so they had to stop the approaching rescuers. Finally, Pain used the shapeshifting technique, transferring Kisame and Itachi Uchiha's chakra onto living sacrifices, creating clones equivalent to their true selves. However, these shapeshifting clones were different from normal clones. They could use all their original jutsu, including Kekkei Genkai. This technique required sacrifices. In the original story, the sacrifices were Sasori's subordinates, spies planted in Sunagakure.
But things were different now.
The spies weren't here. So, they had to use White Zetsu.
Chapter 387, Not Interested.
Pain used the shapeshifting technique, sending chakra clones of Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hashigaki to intercept the Konoha and Suna ninja. Then, they naturally focused on sealing the tailed beast.
You still haven't sealed the One Tail?
At this slow pace, if you were given Kurama, the Nine Tails, would it take you a lifetime to seal it?
Shin's voice echoed as his figure appeared. Hanabi was clinging to Shin's back, her arms wrapped tightly around his neck.
Shin had come to check on the situation.
Hanabi had insisted on coming along.
Shin initially refused, but Hanabi, being stubborn, had followed him anyway. Pain and the others were sealing with agonizing slowness. Shin had already returned to the land of whirlpools and stayed for 2 days, yet they still hadn't finished sealing the One Tail. However, this was likely because, aside from Sasori and Deidara, the others were only present as chakra projections via the illusionary body technique. Shindano, if you think we're slow, you could help us out.
Please, Shindano. Deidara said to Shin.
He was getting tired of this. He'd been standing here for 2 days straight sealing the One Tail.
What is that thing? Why is it so ugly? Hanabi pointed at the demonic statue.
This thing was too ugly. It was the ugliest thing Hanabi had ever seen. The demonic statue was the husk of the Ten Tails, essentially the Ten Tails itself.
And among the tailed beasts, few were good-looking. Helping isn't out of the question.
But there has to be a benefit for me, Shin said to Deidara with a light chuckle.
Deidara's eyes lit up. Shindano must be very interested in dust release, right? I can teach you how to use it.
Deidara possessed the training method for dust release.
He had once been Inoki's student. Inoki had valued Deidara greatly and even taught him dust release, though Deidara hadn't learned it.
Dust release, a Kekkei Tota surpassing Kekkei Genkai, required not only talent but also a bit of luck to master.
Deidara didn't mind sharing it. He believed others likely couldn't master this monstrous technique anyway. Not interested, Shin rejected him mercilessly. Not interested? Deidara was stunned. Shindano. That old man Inoki said this is a Kekkei Tota, surpassing Kekkei Genkai. Deidara didn't understand. Shin didn't bother explaining.
He had already mastered Kekkei Mora, let alone a Kekkei Tota. He already knew dust release. Why would he need Deidara to teach him?
But Deidara truly didn't understand.
In the end, he dejectedly resumed the sealing process.
The shapeshifting clones have been defeated, Kisame spoke up at that moment.
The shapeshifting clones could at most exert 30% of Kisame's chakra, meaning their combat strength was less than 30% of his actual power.
With such strength, though Kisame could stall for some time, he couldn't hold out for too long. Kisame was defeated by the combined efforts of Guy and Lee.
On the other side, Itachi Uchiha's shapeshifting clone was also defeated. Itachi hadn't held back, but with only 30% of his chakra, his combat strength might have been even lower than Kisame's.
Kisame possessed immense chakra, earning him the moniker Tailed Beast without a tail. Even 30% of his chakra was considerable. Compared to Kisame, Itachi Uchiha clearly didn't have as much chakra. It's fine. The ceiling is complete. Pain spoke.
The one tail had been completely sealed within the demonic statue. The statue trembled slightly.
Deidara, Sasori, find a way to retreat, Pain instructed Deidara and Sasori. Then, Pain and the other projections vanished, leaving only Sasori and Deidara.
Oh, right, Shin and Hanabi were also still there.
Gaara lay on the ground. He was dead now. With the tailed beast extracted, Gaara naturally had no way to survive. Even Uzumaki clan members, with their powerful life force, couldn't survive having their tailed beast extracted, let alone Gaara. Boom! A loud roar came from outside.
Shin looked out in surprise as the barrier was broken.
Konoha and Suna had arrived quickly.
Kakashi and the others who rushed in were also startled.
Shin Uzumaki is here too? If they had known, Konoha definitely wouldn't have waded into these muddy waters. Kakashi frowned, looking at Chio, waiting for an explanation. Kakashi felt Chio had tricked them. Chio's expression was even grimmer.
She looked at Shin with a conflicted expression, then shifted her gaze to Sasori.
Sasori, is that you? Chio asked. How did you recognize me? Sasori finally spoke.
His true body was hidden within Hiriko.
How had she recognized him under these circumstances? It really is you, Sasori.
A look of sorrow crossed Chio's face. Her own grandson had become a missing nin. There was nothing more painful than this. Rasengan, Naruto Uzumaki leaped up, a Rasengan in his hand, and charged towards Shin.
A Rasengan? Against me?
Shin sneered coldly, casually kicking Naruto Uzumaki away. Before even reaching Shin, Naruto was sent flying by Shin's kick, crashing into a rock wall and becoming embedded in it.
Naruto! Kakashi quickly checked Naruto's condition, feeling a pang of self-reproach.
He should have been watching him more closely. At the same time, Kakashi was also annoyed by Naruto's reckless attack.
Attacking Shin Uzumaki, even he wouldn't dare do such a thing.
He didn't know where Naruto got such courage.
Naruto holds quite a grudge against me.
Shin looked at Naruto, who had been kicked away.
He didn't understand. He hadn't specifically targeted Naruto, had he? Why did Naruto harbor such resentment towards him? Shin didn't know that Naruto's deep resentment stemmed from the incident when they were trying to retrieve Sasuke Uchiha.
Seeing Shin with Orochimaru, Naruto had concluded that Shin and Orochimaru were allies.
Naruto blamed Shin for Sasuke Uchiha being taken away by Orochimaru, hence his intense animosity.
Kakashi checked Naruto Uzumaki's condition and found him severely injured, with several broken bones.
Actually, Shin had held back. For Akiko Uzumaki's sake.
He had shown mercy.
Otherwise, Naruto Uzumaki would be dead. Child of prophecy? Shin didn't care.
This was a real world. Shin didn't know if things like protagonist halo or luck existed, but even if they did, they were useless against him.
For someone capable of destroying the world, what use was a world's luck?
Yes, if Shin went all out, destroying the Naruto world wouldn't be much of a problem.
Pulling down the moon for an impact, everyone would die. Chapter 388, A Fool's Errand.
Shin glanced at the unconscious Naruto Uzumaki, then dismissed him. Honestly, it was fortunate Naruto had fainted from his injuries.
If he were still conscious, knowing his personality, he definitely wouldn't have given up attacking Shin.
And if he had attacked again, Shin would have unhesitatingly crushed him.
Was that a Rasengan he used earlier? Hanabi asked Shin with surprise. Yes. Don't you know how to use it too? Couldn't you tell? Shin had also taught Hanabi the Rasengan.
Though the Hyuga clan specialized in the gentle fist, it didn't mean they couldn't learn other ninjutsu.
Lee, please take Naruto away.
Kakashi said to Rock Lee.
But... Lee, take Naruto and leave. You're not needed here, Guy directly ordered Lee.
In the end, Lee still obeyed Guy's command, taking Naruto and leaving.
He likely understood that staying here would only make him a burden. Tenten and Sakura also left. They couldn't help here. Especially Sakura.
Without Tsunade as her teacher, her strength was pitifully weak, probably at the bottom of the Konoha 10. Wait, there was no Konoha 12 anymore.
With Hinata and Niji Hyuga gone, could they still be called the Konoha 12? Actually, in the original story, Niji Hyuga wasn't much of a strong one either.
His strength was considerable, but he lacked the unkillable plot armor of a protagonist. He ended up being the only one of the Konoha 12 to die, which was quite tragic.
Now, perhaps Shin had changed his fate.
If he still died, it could only be attributed to his terrible luck.
The two of you, are you planning to fight me?
Shin looked at Kakashi and Guy. They were staring at him as if they wanted to fight.
You're also a member of the Akatsuki, aren't you?
Anyone from the Akatsuki is our enemy, Guy said with a serious expression. Knowing Shin's strength was immense, but he couldn't let fear deter him.
Besides, the hot-blooded guy didn't even know the meaning of fear. Since they said so, Shin didn't bother saying more.
If they wanted to attack him, they would have to pay the price.
Chiyo's heart leaped with joy. The most troublesome opponent, Shin Uzumaki. Konoha's ninja were actually going to deal with him? This was an unexpected boon. Shouldn't we be retreating now? Deidara couldn't help but ask.
He remembered the leader ordering them to retreat.
Were they really going to fight them? Honestly, Deidara didn't want to fight. He wasn't in good condition.
Sealing the one tail had taken several days, he had no stamina left. These past few days, he had survived by eating soldier pills. That stuff tasted terrible, and eating it also had side effects. Deidara felt that right now, he could at most exert 60% of his strength.
We retreat, Sasori said to Deidara. What about Shindano? Deidara asked. He hadn't forgotten Shin.
Shin helping him heal his arm hadn't been in vain.
Just worry about yourself. If he encounters danger, we're even less likely to survive, Sasori glanced at Deidara and said coolly. Looking at his grandmother, Sasori didn't want to fight her.
Retreating directly was the best option. Chiyo looked at her grandson with a complex expression.
But as a Sunagakure ninja, Chiyo couldn't just let him leave. White secret technique, Chikamatsu collection of 10 puppets. Chiyo brought out her signature technique. The Chikamatsu collection of 10 puppets she summoned now was different from the original.
The original collection was puppets created by Monzaemon Chikamatsu, but those had been destroyed during the Second Shinobi World War. The current Chikamatsu collection of 10 puppets was replicated by Chiyo herself. Though perhaps not as strong as the original, they were definitely not weak. Red secret technique, performance of 100 puppets. Sasori controlled nearly 100 puppets, surrounding Chiyo's Chikamatsu collection of 10 puppets.
He can do that,
Deidara said with surprise. This was the first time he had seen Sasori use it.
This was normal.
After all, this technique was Sasori's strongest. Naturally, he wouldn't use it lightly. Though controlling 100 puppets surprised Chiyo, in battle, she couldn't gain the upper hand. While Sasori had a numerical advantage, quality trumped quantity.
Chiyo's 10 puppets were enough to hold off Sasori's nearly 100. Of course, Sasori still hadn't used his strongest puppet, the third Kazekage.
He didn't intend to fight his grandmother.
Sasori's goal was to leave. He controlled his puppets to block Chiyo, then he and Deidara departed.
After leaving the cave, Deidara created a clay bird, taking Sasori with him. Sasori recalled his puppets, and the two of them quickly fled. Flying in the sky, Chiyo could only watch helplessly.
At the same time, Chiyo didn't want to keep Sasori here.
And so, Gaara, who should have died, survived this time. Turning her head, Chiyo looked at Gaara's body, which had become a corpse. Granny Chiyo, take the 5th Kazekage and leave, Kakashi said to Chiyo.
I know. You two be careful. Don't get into trouble. It's best to escape immediately.
You're no match for him.
Shio picked up Gaara's body and kindly reminded Kakashi and Guy. Although Kakashi was the son of her enemy, he had come to help Sunagakure this time. Shio couldn't repay kindness with ingratitude. In Shio's eyes, them confronting Shin Uzumaki was a stupid move. She didn't know what they were thinking, but Shio wouldn't stop them. Reminding them was already an act of kindness on her part. As for stopping them? Why should she? Whoever won or lost held no disadvantage for Sunagakure. Shio still had things to do, namely, resurrecting the deceased Gaara. She possessed a forbidden jutsu called one's own life reincarnation, originally intended to revive Sasori's parents. But now, Shio prepared to use it on Gaara. The price of using this forbidden jutsu was immense, her own life. Shio had come to terms with this. Her old bones had reached the end of their road. Being able to save a young, promising ninja was worth it. Are you two really going to fight me? Shin asked again. Kakashi and Guy exchanged a glance, their hearts firm. They already considered Shin Uzumaki a great enemy. If they could seize this opportunity to eliminate him, it would be a good thing for both Konoha and the shinobi world. The reason for this bold thought was mainly because Kakashi had awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. Or rather, the Mangekyo Sharingan had been awakened long ago, Kakashi had only now mastered it. The dojutsu of the Mangekyo Sharingan was Kakashi's confidence. His dojutsu was very powerful. Kakashi felt it wasn't impossible to kill Shin Uzumaki. Shin could somewhat guess their thoughts. What gave them courage at this moment was likely the dojutsu Kamui and the 8 inner gates. Chapter 389, What do you do when your killing move fails? Hanabi, clinging to Shin's back, looked at Kakashi and Might Guy with excitement. Shin nii, you always brag about how strong you are. Let me see it now. Don't tell me you can't even beat these two. Be quiet, or I'll throw you off. Shin said irritably. Brag? Shin felt he was always quite humble. Guy, I'm counting on you to distract him, Kakashi whispered to Guy. The Mangekyo Sharingan Kamui, though powerful, had many drawbacks. It was slow to activate and consumed a lot of chakra. Don't worry. I'll give it my all. Guy clenched his fists, feeling like he was about to ignite. His next opponent was the strongest in the shinobi world, Shin Uzumaki. After so many years, Kakashi trusted Guy implicitly. Though Guy often acted like a goofball, he was dependable when it mattered. However, it was always best to be cautious. Kakashi felt he needed to be extremely careful. He hadn't experienced Shin's strength firsthand, only heard legends. But the legends were incredibly exaggerated, making Shin Uzumaki sound even stronger than the Sage of Six Paths. Honestly, Kakashi felt the rumors were a bit over the top. Shin Uzumaki's strength probably wasn't as formidable as the legends claimed. Unfortunately, Kakashi had no idea that Shin's strength was even more exaggerated than the rumors suggested. If the Sage of Six Paths truly dared to appear, Shin would indeed beat him down. 8 inner gates. Gate of opening, gate of healing, gate of life, gate of pain, gate of limit, gate of joy, gate of shock. Open, Guy roared, opening the 8 inner gates all the way to the 7th gate. His eyes rolled back, his hair stood on end, and the aura erupting from his body made the small pebbles on the ground tremble. He's strong. Shin nii, can you even beat him? Maybe we should run? Hanabi gulped, then said to Shin in a very timid tone. You were just talking big. Now you're scared? What happened to your tough girl act? Shin asked Hanabi. Hanabi felt extremely awkward. I'm not scared. It's just that he looks really strong. Ha-yeah. Guy shouted, punching towards Shin. His speed was so extreme it left after images in the air, his fist creating a sonic boom. Kakashi had already activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. Only then could he barely keep up with Guy's speed. Meaning, after opening the 7th gate, Guy's speed was already pushing the limits of what the Mangekyo Sharingan could track. Your punch is too straightforward. Shin raised his hand and caught Guy's fist. All of Guy's immense power was effortlessly stopped by Shin, just like that, with an air of casual ease.
A punch capable of shattering a mountain. Shin caught it without his body even swaying. Kakashi was so shocked he forgot to use Kamui, staring dumbfounded. Still too weak. Shin casually flung Guy away, sending him flying several kilometers. If it were anyone else, they would have died from the fall.
Is he all bark and no bite? Hanabi couldn't help but wonder. Or maybe I'm just that strong? Did you think I was weak? Shin tapped Hanabi. You never showed off before. And Big Sis just said you were strong. I thought she was exaggerating. Hanabi said glumly. True.
Shin rarely showed his strength. Though her sister had said Shin was very strong, Hanabi hadn't seen it herself and just thought her sister was exaggerating due to admiration.
Can I become that strong too? Hanabi asked Shin. Maybe. You can try in your next life. Probably no hope in this one. Shin said, grinning. Humph. I don't believe you. Hanabi was determined to surpass Shin someday.
Then she'd flick him on the forehead. Shin and Hanabi chatted, while Kakashi, standing not far away, had cold sweat dripping down his forehead, his Mangekyo Sharingan practically bulging out.
Why is it malfunctioning at a time like this?
Kakashi was about to cry from anxiety. His Kamui was currently unusable. Or rather, he could use it, but it had no effect.
Kakashi didn't know what was happening.
Chakra was consumed, ocular power was consumed, but the Kamui he used had lost its effect.
The space here, I've sealed it with Fuinjutsu.
Your Kamui is ineffective. Shin, likely noticing Kakashi, kindly explained.
You? How do you know my dojutsu?
Kakashi was shocked. He had only told Guy about his dojutsu earlier. He'd told Guy mainly because he needed Guy's cooperation. It was necessary for his partner to know his abilities, and Kakashi trusted Guy wouldn't recklessly reveal his dojutsu.
Is it that hard for me to know? I know everything. Alright, Shin was showing off a bit.
Though Shin knew most things in the Naruto world, there were still some things he didn't know.
For example, the Sage of Six Paths' current hiding place. Shin didn't know that.
If he did, Shin would have already hunted him down and finished him off. Fire style, Great Fire Annihilation. Shin formed a single hand seal, then spewed out a massive fireball over 100 meters in diameter, like a flaming mountain surging towards Kakashi.
Is this a sea of fire?
Kakashi was stunned, momentarily forgetting to dodge.
Daytime Tiger.
At the critical moment, it was Guy who saved Kakashi's life, using Daytime Tiger to disperse the massive sea of flames.
Kakashi. Don't get distracted during a fight.
Guy, covered in blood, lectured Kakashi.
Sorry, Kakashi looked apologetic.
The reason he lost focus wasn't because he was scared by the Great Fire Annihilation, but because Kamui was unusable, leaving Kakashi somewhat disoriented.
This was their key killing move against Shin Uzumaki. Now that their killing move was gone, what should they do? Guy, my Kamui is having problems. I can't use it now.
You should leave quickly, Kakashi said gravely to Guy. Daytime Tiger. Guy completely ignored Kakashi, unleashing his full power with a punch into the air. A giant tiger formed from air pressure lunged towards Shin. Gentle fist art, 8 trigrams vacuum palm. Shin casually slapped his palm forward.
The giant tiger was instantly dispersed by the palm strike, which then continued towards Guy and Kakashi. Put.
Guy spat out a mouthful of blood, his body sent flying. Kakashi suffered the same fate. However, if one were to compare who was more injured, it was definitely Guy. Guy had blocked most of the attack for Kakashi. So, Guy's love for Kakashi was true love, Obito's was fake.
Guy. Kakashi went over and helped Guy up.
His heart felt heavy. It was his decision to confront Shin Uzumaki, yet his decision had led to this result. Both their lives were in danger.
Chapter 390, Shin vs 8 Gates. Guy.
Kakashi, you go first, Guy said to Kakashi, wiping the blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Earlier, Kakashi had wanted Guy to leave, but Guy certainly wouldn't abandon Kakashi.
Besides, Konoha needed Kakashi more. Go!
Without allowing Kakashi to object, Guy grabbed Kakashi's collar and threw him away.
8th gate, Gate of Death, open. 8 inner gates released formation.
After tossing Kakashi away, Guy opened the final gate of the 8 inner gates, the Gate of Death. With all 8 gates open and the 8 inner gates released formation, red steam, generated by evaporating blood, enveloped his body. His power surged, dozens of times greater than a peak Kage.
I never said I was going to kill you. Why are you going all out?
Shin looked at Guy, who had opened all 8 gates, his expression somewhat exasperated. Kakashi, standing in the distance, watched Guy, who was now wreathed in red steam, tears welling up in his eyes. Kakashi knew the 8 inner gates forbidden technique well, he had even trained in it, though his mastery was far from Guy's. Once all 8 gates were opened, the user would inevitably die.
Guy's father, Might Due, had died after opening all 8 gates. However, Might Due with all 8 gates open was definitely not as strong as Might Guy with all 8 gates open, because Might Guy's base strength was greater than his father's. There was nothing to be particularly proud of. Might Guy being stronger than his father was because his father had paved the way for him. Little girl, I'm sending you back. Shin glanced at Hanabi, then used Yamatsu Hirasaka to send her back to the land of whirlpools. Though Hanabi would be safe here, Shin could guarantee she wouldn't be harmed. She was somewhat in the way. So, Shin sent her back.
Guy, with all 8 gates open, was a rare opponent. His combat strength had reached 6 paths level. Even among 6 paths level individuals, he wouldn't be considered weak. The only unfortunate thing was that he couldn't sustain it. After Guy opened the 8th gate, his life force was constantly draining away. He wouldn't last long before his life force was completely depleted, and he died. Such a massive power boost naturally came with a corresponding price.
Evening Elephant.
Guy's fist struck the air at super high speed, forming continuous air cannons shaped like elephant feet. Their power was enough to create a deep well in the ground. Even if a meteor fell from the sky, the current Guy could shatter it.
An Evening Elephant had 5 steps.
This was only the first step, the subsequent attacks would become increasingly stronger. Facing Guy's attack, Shin naturally wouldn't just stand there and take it.
Super Shinra Tensei. Shin's eyes transformed into the Ninetomo Rinna Tensigen.
His aura changed, and the clouds in the sky were dispersed by his sheer presence. With Shin at the center, an immense repulsive force, capable of pushing away even small planets, was continuously released. Guy's continuous air cannon attacks were also repelled. Second step. Ignoring the strain on his body, Guy unleashed another air cannon. But without exception, it was still repelled by the repulsive force. In fact, the repulsive force was steadily pushing closer to Guy. Third step, fourth step, fifth step, Guy's fists, radiating power, strained against Shin's Super Shinra Tensei.
Ag.
Guy let out a series of roars, but even the fifth step of Evening Elephant couldn't overcome the Super Shinra Tensei's repulsive force.
Boom.
The surrounding mountain peaks, forests, including the ground and the clouds in the sky, all completely vanished. The ground became a massive basin, and even groundwater gushed out, forming an incredibly large lake. Guy's broken body slammed into the ground, more than a dozen bones shattered.
Nagato Uzumaki, using Super Shinra Tensei, could destroy the entire village of Konoha.
If Shin used it with all his might, destroying a small planet wouldn't be impossible. Shin floated in midair, his expression extremely calm, looking down at Guy's broken body.
Guy wasn't dead.
His fingers twitched, and he climbed out of the deep pit, looking up at Shin.
Opening the 8 inner gates released formation, and he hadn't even scratched Shin?
His body's injuries were partly self-inflicted from using the 8 inner gates released formation, and partly from the Super Shinra Tensei. If not for Guy's incredible power, which had allowed him to resist most of the repulsive force's impact, he would have already been crushed into paste.
Shinra Tensei was both an offensive and defensive ninjutsu.
The shinobi world had many techniques hailed as the strongest shield, such as the Shield of Shikaku and the Lightning Release Chakra Mode's Lightning Armor. However, the truly strongest defensive jutsu was likely Shinra Tensei. If your repulsive force was strong enough, forget attacks, you could even push away planets.
It was normal for Guy's evening elephant to be unable to break through. Guy, I admire your tenacity, Shin said to Might Guy. Compared to those born with cheats, Might Guy had almost nothing. As a child, he was a dead last, a failure unable to use ninjutsu. Yet, he could unleash such power now. All of this was earned through his own tireless efforts. In terms of talent, Guy definitely wasn't outstanding. He was the type of genius who achieved everything through hard work and sweat, not innate talent. It's an honor to have your admiration. Might Guy panted, each breath expelling a bloody mist that swirled around his body. His skin was cracked like a tortoise shell, his blood boiling, literally boiling. His body was about to be scorched, it couldn't bear the burden any longer. Then, Might Guy assumed a running stance. Seeing Guy's posture, Shin knew he was about to use his strongest taijutsu secret technique. Night Guy. This was the ultimate secret technique after Evening Elephant, used when all 8 gates were open. Might Guy then ran at near light speed, the chakra gathered throughout his body forming a bizarre dragon shape. Ugh! Aha! Night Guy. Might Guy ran, even treading on air as if flying, and kicked towards Shin with all his might. Space itself distorted. Anyone without profound mastery of spacetime ninjutsu would likely be unable to use it to dodge at this moment. If Obito were here, facing this attack, he too would be unable to use Kamui to escape. Though Obito's Kamui was masterfully used, under this kind of spatial distortion, using spacetime ninjutsu had a high chance of failure. Taijutsu secret technique, Starfall Strike. Though Shin could dodge, he chose not to. He wasn't afraid of a head-on clash. In terms of taijutsu, Shin felt he could claim to be number 1. This punch, like a falling star. Pitch-black chakra formed a small galaxy, its surface burning with flames, colliding with Might Guy's Night Guy. Kakashi, already tens of miles away, knelt on the ground, struggling to support himself, his face a mask of stunned disbelief. Even from such a great distance, he could still feel such immense pressure that he found it difficult to even stand. That wraps up this part of What If Copy System in Naruto. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Quick reminder. What If Reborn as Gohan in future timeline is now on hold, since we've caught up with the author. So now, I need your help picking the next project for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these 3 fanfics. What if Transmigrated in One Piece and becoming a Marine? What if Ichigo awoke his powers to save his mother? What if Transmigrated into a nightmare mode Dragon Ball world? Please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. I'll take the top pick and start working on that as the series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.